Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Adoc Talent Management's PhD Transatlantic webinar series. As everyone joins with their audio, I'll give us a few minutes to connect, and I'll start by sharing my screen and introducing myself. Thank you all so much for joining us today. It's wonderful to see so many faces interested in our PhD skills and what we can do with them. So, to get started, I'll share this with everyone, and I'll give my team as well a chance to introduce themselves. So for myself, my name is Rebecca Mayman. I'm a research officer and recruitment consultant with Adoc Talent Management. I've been working with Adoc for almost the past year in their research projects on PhD competencies and employment outcomes. And my background is in educational psychology. I did my PhD at McGill University here in Montreal. And it's been a wonderful experience to learn about all the skills that we develop during our doctoral programs. And I'm looking forward to sharing them with you. So just a brief overview of what we'll take a look at today. We'll introduce our team and let you know a little bit of what Adoc Talent Management is about. And we'll take 15 minutes to share with you some of our research findings, as well as some of our tips and advice in pursuing your career. And then we will have the rest of our time to have the interactive part of our webinar, where we can share some of our experiences and our questions and the challenges and ways that we've overcome some of those challenges with each other. So really this is a chance for everyone to have an open discussion, and I saw some great suggestions in the survey that comes before the webinar, so I'm looking forward to that as well. And then at the end, of course, we'll wrap up with any final questions and reflections. So just briefly, if anyone is new to using Zoom still, some tips here. We do want to be able to hear everyone, so I would ask kindly that we speak one at a time. It is an interactive webinar, so of course we want you to be able to talk and to share. So for that, we can ask that you can use the hand raise function in Zoom. If you just go into the chat and under more, you'll see a place for you to raise your hand, and I'll say go right ahead. And just don't forget to unmute your microphone and mute yourself when you're not talking. You can speak in whichever language you prefer. This is a bilingual webinar, so we can speak in English or French, and we're happy to answer you that way. And of course, you can choose your gallery view or speaker view. When I stop sharing my screen, you'll see that option at the top right-hand corner if you want to be able to see some of our participants. And just to give you a reminder from our inscription page that we are recording today's session just to be able to share with other PhDs. Yeah, so let's get started. At this time, I would like to invite Faustine from our Paris team to introduce herself. And you know what? Usually I ask everyone to introduce ourselves when we first start. And I think I'm still waking up this morning. So maybe Faustine, I'll give the entire team a chance to introduce themselves. I'm so sorry, team. Look what happens after just a few months of being at home.
Merci Rebecca. Bah, du coup, je vais me présenter en premier, puis quand tout le monde se sera présenté, je reprendrai avec la présentation du cabinet. Donc moi, je m'appelle Faustine Bizet, je travaille au sein de l'Adoc Talent Management depuis 1 an et demi. Je travaille sur le pôle recrutement et sur le pôle formation. Et avant cela, j'ai fait une thèse en chimie thérapeutique où je travaillais sur la conception de molécules pour le diabète de type 2. Et j'ai rejoint Adoc Talent Management 2 mois après ma soutenance de thèse sur ces missions-là.
Bonjour à tous, moi c'est Marion Cordès. Comme Faustine, j'ai rejoint Adoc Management il y a à peu près 1 an et demi et je travaille également sur le recrutement et la formation, principalement sur les sujets de construction de projets professionnels et de voilà, pouvoir bien préparer ces candidatures. Moi, par contre, j'ai pas de doctorat, mais j'ai plutôt un parcours orienté ressources humaines avec un master RH. Donc voilà, et puis je suis ravie de pouvoir participer à ce nouveau webinaire pour pouvoir partager plein d'informations sur la recherche d'emploi avec tout le monde.
Je vais me présenter. Bonjour à tous. Moi, je suis Yamina Couvin, donc je suis responsable du pôle recrutement et j'interviens également pour la formation. Je suis récente dans l'organisation puisque j'ai intégré Adoc Talent Management il y a plus d'une semaine. Et au même titre que Marion, je ne suis pas docteur de formation, mais j'ai un parcours aussi RH avec une formation Master 2 RH. Voilà, et pareil, je suis également ravie d'être avec vous aujourd'hui dans ce webinaire.
C'est mon tour peut-être, oui. Donc moi je me présente également, mon nom c'est Laurence Tenis, j'ai un parcours de recherche, donc j'ai fait un doctorat en biologie. Très rapidement après ma thèse, je me suis orientée vers l'accompagnement des chercheurs dans leur développement de carrière en tant que coach et formatrice dans une association belge. Et puis depuis plus d'1 an et demi, je développe à présent le bureau belge d'Adoc Talent Management où je suis consultante en recrutement et formation et business développeur puisque je développe le bureau. Voilà.
Du coup, pour présenter rapidement le cabinet Adoc Talent Management, c'est un cabinet de recrutement, mais ce n'est pas n'importe quel puisque c'est le premier en Europe qui est spécialisé dans le recrutement des docteurs. Il a été fondé il y a une dizaine d'années par un docteur en biologie et un docteur en neurosciences cognitives. Et le but, c'était de valoriser le doctorat en dehors du monde académique et de faire comprendre aussi aux docteurs qui peuvent travailler en dehors du monde académique, qu'ils ont plein d'autres portes ouvertes, notamment à travers toutes les compétences qu'ils ont développées. Et ça se fait à travers 3 pôles. Donc, le pôle recrutement, sur lequel toutes les personnes qui sont présentées travaillent, où on accompagne les clients qui souhaitent recruter des docteurs, mais qui n'y arrivent pas pour diverses raisons. Le pôle formation, où on anime des formations sur la valorisation du doctorat, sur identifier ses compétences, la gestion du projet de thèse, le monde de l'entreprise, préparer ses entretiens d'embauche, tout plein de thématiques différentes. Et puis, le pôle innovation-études, où là, on construit des questionnaires et des études sur la poursuite de carrière des docteurs après leur thèse. Donc, c'est-à-dire dans quel secteur d'activité ils travaillent, combien de temps ils ont mis à trouver leur premier poste, quelles compétences ils ont valorisées, est-ce qu'il y a eu des ruptures de carrière dans leur parcours professionnel. Et toutes les études, évidemment, sont accessibles sur notre site et Rebecca en présentera une partie aujourd'hui. Et puis, comme vous l'avez compris, pour combiner au maximum toutes les compétences pour répondre à tout ça, on a dans nos équipes des experts des ressources humaines et des docteurs. Et on a l'équipe de Paris, l'équipe du Canada où Rebecca travaille, et puis l'équipe de Bruxelles qui est portée par Laurence. Et un cabinet associé qui est Adoc Métis, qui est plus spécialisé dans les ressources humaines en ESR. Donc ici, c'est un échantillon des partenaires avec qui on travaille, notamment sur tout ce qui est innovation, études et formation. Donc, on voit que c'est représenté de manière internationale. Il y a aussi bien la France que la Belgique, que notamment le Canada. Et puis, on a aussi, surtout en ce qui concerne le recrutement, des clients qui sont des grandes entreprises ou des grands groupes, des cabinets de conseil, des startups, des entreprises de taille intermédiaire. Vraiment, tout type de structure est à la recherche de docteurs. Et puis, à travers les plus de 10 ans maintenant de vie d'Adoc Talent Management, il y a un gros portefeuille client qui a été développé avec plus de 130 clients. Donc, comme je le disais, tout type de structure, aussi bien des grands groupes internationaux que des petites entreprises, des moyennes entreprises, des startups. On a beaucoup enrichi notre base de données aussi, et à travers les candidatures qu'on reçoit et à travers les profils que nous, on va chercher. Donc, c'est ce qui est indiqué ici. On a maintenant une base de données de plus de 54 000 CV. Et on a pu également permettre de faire embaucher plus de 500 personnes avec nos clients. Et à travers les différentes études qui ont été faites, et Rebecca en parlera, il y a un gros référentiel de compétences cœur développé par les docteurs qui a été créé. Donc, c'est ce qui a indiqué le répertoire de 111 compétences. Et puis, comme je le disais, on a maintenant le cabinet à Bruxelles qui existe depuis environ 1 an et demi, et le cabinet au Canada qui existe depuis 2016, je crois. Donc, on essaie vraiment d'avoir cette activité à un niveau international.
Thank you, Faustine. So now that you know a little bit about Adoc talent management, I would like to share with you some of the studies that they have done over the past few years. So we'll talk about 2 studies today. First would be the career study, which was conducted in France back just a few years back. And in France, they looked at over 4,500 PhDs and PhD holders, as well as over 130 employers. And we looked at competencies of PhDs that PhDs developed during their research, as well as their most recent professional experience. And on the employer side, we also looked at what are the needs of employers in terms of skills when they're looking to hire PhDs. What do the companies that hire PhDs look like? And how do they integrate PhDs within their roles? So in France, they actually looked at competencies of PhDs in an open-ended way. So we had thousands and thousands of open-ended texts as to what are the competencies developed during the doctorate. And that's how we were able to narrow down a framework of PhD competencies. So when we look at the study in Canada that was conducted just over the past 2 years, we take that competency framework and we see, how does this look in Canada? So we still are examining the same things, competencies of PhDs, their professional experiences, and then the employer side as well, but with close-ended questions of the framework that we developed. So what did we find when we look at competencies? Here is a nice tree that we have that presents core competencies that we had found in the initial study in France. So when I talk about core competencies, these are competencies that are likely to be found in a PhD, regardless of other factors such as the research discipline or how many years it's been since you defended, how the PhD was funded. So we do in France and in Canada, I'll show you both shortly, we do find a pool of core competencies within our competency pool that PhDs tend to have regardless. So what do we find? Typically, we expect scientific and technical expertise, which is what we find down on the bottom in light purple. But we do find also that PhDs are more than scientific experts. We find a number of transferable competencies, if you look over here in the red, things that are more formally learned, such as written and oral communication, how to promote research, pedagogy, planning, time management, things like this. And then we also find transversal competencies that are less formally acquired, but still important. Things like our capacity to analyze, synthesize, innovate, critical thinking. And beyond our transferable and transversal competencies, we also find a number of aptitudes and behaviors, aptitudes and qualities such as creativity, autonomy, rigorous analysis, as well as behaviors over in the dark purple on the bottom right. So things like curiosity and perseverance. And lastly, we also take a look at meta-competencies. And these would be our capacity to adapt and our capacity for continuous learning. So PhD research and the programs that we undergo actually help us develop a number of competencies. So looking across Canada and France, just to give you an idea, because we are having a transatlantic webinar, we do find similar competencies within that core pool, and then we also find some other ones that vary between countries. Generally, we find scientific and technical expertise, of course, planning, time management, perseverance, creativity. When we look in Canada, we find in the core pool things like methodology, our capacity to analyze, in-depth thinking, independence. And then for the core pool in France, we also have a number of other competencies as well, such as our ability to work in a team, to work autonomously, to adapt, written communication, scientific watch, things like this. So this is just to give you an idea of what it looks like across the board. Just a quick note, you'll see on the bottom, I know it looks like the way the percentages are that we might have like more stronger competencies in Canada, but I would kindly ask you to remember the difference in methodologies. So this is why you'd see a difference in numbers. Because in Canada, we were choosing from a predetermined list rather than open-ended questions. So where do our PhDs take all these competencies into their professional career pursuit? Where do they work? Here in blue, we see permanent positions. So this gives us an idea of where we find PhDs working in permanent versus short-term or contract positions in universities, in the public, and in the private sector. So you'll notice that in universities we have 34% in Canada. In the public sector we have about 60%. And we find the most permanent contracts in the private sector. In France we find the same thing. You'll note that in France universities are part of the public sector, so that's why we have it set up like this. But we do find around 67% to have permanent positions in France, but much more in the private sector. When we talk about PhDs, people typically think that we just work in research and development, and while a large number of PhDs do work in R&D positions, sometimes, for me, one of the most interesting findings that we have is the number of PhDs that work outside of research and development. So here we find in France and Canada, we have between 27 and 37% of PhDs working outside of R&D. And then we also have the breakdown of R&D within research universities and R&D outside of universities in the private sector as well. So there are options across multiple sectors of activity. When we look at what types of employment they have, not just in the sector, but what do those roles look like? What do those functions look like? We find a very large percent to work in teaching and research, of course, but here we can find other areas and other options that we have for our careers. So working in IT, working in consulting, production support, health, commercial communications, marketing, as well as in management positions. And while the numbers are slightly different, we do see a similar trend across the Atlantic. And just to give you an idea of what this looks like in Belgium also for our friends who have joined us from Belgium. This graph is not from our research, but I thought that we should have an idea of what this looks like in Belgium also. Here we also see a large percentage that work in universities, but outside, we still have more than half of PhDs from this data working in research institutes, nonprofit sectors, and service and industry, government and policy, as well as higher education in and outside of universities. So that was just to be able to give you an idea of a little bit of what we look at. And so when we look at our research across Canada and France so far, we find that yes, there are some minor differences between the two countries, but overall, the general trends that we find are similar. And this is, This is good for us because we weren't really looking to compare them, but what we're looking for is to be able to show you that no matter where you are or what research discipline you're in or what career path you're looking to take, that you do have some core competencies that can help you be successful in your career path. So we find core or central competencies within PhDs who, it doesn't matter those external factors. We also find that, this shows us that we are more than scientific experts, that there are a number of other competencies, such as those behaviors and aptitudes and qualities that I mentioned. And in addition to that, if you ever want to take a look on our website, you can find the full report and see other competencies that we find outside of that core pool that are influenced by perhaps research discipline or how you financed your PhD. But overall, we have a good reference framework that can just give you an idea and help you to identify what your skills are. And we find that PhDs are already using these skills in a number of different types of employment across different sectors. So at this point, I would like to invite Laurence to talk with us about moving on from understanding what our skills are, maybe what our options are. How do we get there?
Merci beaucoup, Rebecca. Oui, du coup, comment faire pour promouvoir vos compétences et surtout dans la perspective de la poursuite de carrière. Alors, on voulait vous présenter brièvement l'approche qu'on propose, entre autres à travers nos formations et nos séances de coaching, qui est de prendre le temps de faire l'analyse de vos expériences professionnelles, dont le doctorat bien entendu, en découpant l'expérience par activité. Donc vraiment définir la somme et la combinaison des activités qui vous permettent de mener à bien vos missions. Et ensuite, quand on a pu faire la liste claire des activités que compose notre expérience, on peut alors en déduire et identifier les compétences qui sont mobilisées et nécessaires pour mener au succès ces différentes activités. Les gens peuvent avoir tendance à faire le contraire, ce qui nous semble être une erreur, d'essayer de faire une liste de compétences toute simple, alors qu'on n'a pas réfléchi en amont à quoi on peut le raccrocher en tant que preuve concrète. Tandis qu'en faisant cette méthode-là, ça vous permet vraiment d'identifier les activités, les différentes tâches et responsabilités que vous avez endossées ou que vous endossez, qui constituent donc des preuves pour illustrer ces compétences mobilisées. Voilà. On peut mettre le suivant, s'il te plaît. Merci. Et du coup, pour pouvoir promouvoir vos compétences, il y a une méthode assez communément utilisée qui non seulement peut vous permettre de faire cette promotion, d'en parler à travers votre CV, j'en parlerai après, mais qui est en plus une méthode fortement utilisée par les recruteurs. Donc, ça vous permet vraiment de vous préparer à créer un storytelling, créer une histoire autour de vos expériences pour illustrer ces fameuses compétences. Et du coup, cette méthode STAR, qui est un acronyme qui veut dire situation, tâche, action, résultat, vous permet donc de toujours présenter ces compétences en les mettant en contexte, donc en expliquant la situation, quelle était la tâche à effectuer, avec qui, où, quand. Voilà, réfléchissez vraiment en répondant aux éléments contextuels qui permettent de comprendre la situation et la problématique. Quelles étaient vos tâches? Donc, vous pouvez ensuite décrire plus précisément quel était votre rôle, quels étaient les objectifs, quels étaient les critères de succès définis par rapport à cette tâche, à cette mission, et aussi quel est donc votre rôle au sein du groupe. Ensuite, vous pouvez décrire un peu plus précisément les actions, donc ce que vous avez fait concrètement, pourquoi vous l'avez fait, comment vous l'avez fait, et du coup, quelles compétences vous avez dû mobiliser pour réaliser ces tâches. Alors, ensuite, vous allez pouvoir exposer les résultats. Donc, quels sont les résultats attendus, qu'ils soient succès ou pas d'ailleurs, et quel impact ça a pu avoir. Et je dirais même que dans le cas de résultats non attendus ou différents de ceux attendus, retirez-en la leçon et expliquez comment vous avez pu rebondir par rapport à ça. Oui. Du coup, donc, cette fameuse méthode STAR vous permet donc de promouvoir vos compétences et de le présenter dans un CV. Donc, quelques recommandations pour un CV. Donc, déjà, au niveau de la taille d'un CV, ne dépassez pas 2 pages maximum. Si vous pouvez le faire sur une seule page, c'est encore mieux. Et donc, il y a des sections incontournables qui sont bien sûr, j'ai envie de dire, un résumé de vos qualifications, de vos compétences, où vous pouvez reprendre de 2 à 4 points précis qui vous permettent de mettre en avant des compétences clés pour le job. Alors, quand on dit ici compétences clés, ça peut être à la fois des compétences techniques si elles sont fortement attendues, mais surtout aussi les compétences transversales dont vient de vous parler Rebecca. Pour l'expérience professionnelle, bien entendu, vous imitez votre expérience de recherche, de doctorat, et vous y décrivez, vous apportez donc une job description en décrivant, en utilisant des verbes d'action et en donnant des éléments quantitatifs, qualitatifs qui permettent de personnaliser ce que vous avez concrètement fait. Ça permet à toute personne qui lit votre CV de bien comprendre ce qu'a été votre travail, j'ai envie de dire quotidien en tant que chercheur. Et ce qui se cache derrière ce sujet de thèse, souvent peu clair pour la majorité des personnes, même pour les autres chercheurs. Donc voilà, et je vous invite aussi là-dessus à utiliser un titre d'emploi en ne mettant pas étudiant, doctorant. Ne vous positionnez pas en tant qu'étudiant, mais bien en tant que chercheur. Vous pouvez mettre junior researcher ou early stage researcher, suivant la convention un peu européenne, qui sont de bonnes suggestions. Ensuite, développer bien entendu toutes vos autres expériences professionnelles, personnelles, associatives, bénévolat. Vous avez également la section éducation où vous pouvez évidemment vous concentrer plus sur vos réalisations scientifiques, l'impact de votre recherche, mais concentrez-vous de manière brève sur le diplôme obtenu. Vous avez déjà décrit votre doctorat dans l'expérience professionnelle. Et puis, vous pouvez sélectionner quelques publications les plus pertinentes pour votre cible que vous pouvez mettre en avant ou faire un tableau plutôt récapitulatif sur le nombre et le type de publications, d'interventions, de présentations, de posters, le nombre de prix, de bourses, de voyages scientifiques que vous avez réalisés qui donnent un aperçu général sur tout ce que vous avez concrètement fait aussi. Alors, concernant la lettre de motivation, comme elle l'indique, elle doit informer sur la motivation. Donc, j'insiste sur le fait que ce n'est pas un résumé de CV, puisque vous y joignez également votre CV. Il faut que ça apporte d'autres éléments. Ça démontre pour nous, recruteurs, votre capacité à communiquer et votre capacité à communiquer avec la cible. Donc, il est important, évidemment, de la personnaliser et d'être spécifique pour l'emploi ou du moins l'entreprise en tant que, si c'est une candidature spontanée, à laquelle vous vous adressez. Utilisez des mots-clés. Donc, soyez précis, visez juste, utilisez un vocabulaire commun avec votre interlocuteur et utilisez, voilà, concentrez-vous sur quelques arguments, 3 environ, forts, plutôt que d'essayer de faire une liste exhaustive qui n'est pas aussi en lien avec les attentes de votre recruteur. Utilisez ces fameux verbes d'action pour vraiment essayer de rendre les choses concrètes le plus possible et les illustrer de manière personnalisée. La deuxième aspect, la deuxième chose que vous démontrez à travers une lettre de motivation, c'est votre capacité à comprendre le projet et le job lui-même. Donc, soyez clair et montrez que vous l'avez bien compris. Alors, la technique You, I, Us, donc vous, je, nous, est une technique simple, mais qui peut bien vous guider sur la construction de votre lettre. Donc, vous pourrez considérer 3 paragraphes principaux. D'abord, expliquer pourquoi vous vous adressez à cette entreprise, en quoi l'entreprise ou le job vous intéresse et colle à vos valeurs, colle à vos motivations et à votre parcours. Ensuite, parler de vous, mais en tant que que solutionneurs de problématiques. Donc, expliquez que vous avez bien compris à quoi ils sont confrontés et comment vous pouvez contribuer à le solutionner. Et puis, finalement, invitez-les à vous rencontrer. Ça, c'est montrer bien que vous avez compris la nature de leurs besoins, de leurs problématiques, pour vous rendre indispensable. Voilà. Alors, et pour parler de votre doctorat, il y a de fortes chances que la personne à laquelle vous vous adressez n'est pas expert de votre sujet. D'ailleurs, vous êtes peut-être presque le seul au monde. Du coup, bien, il faut apprendre effectivement à vulgariser le sujet, à l'expliquer sans que ce soit expliqué de manière idiote. Ne prenez pas votre interlocuteur pour quelqu'un d'idiot, mais pour quelqu'un de non-expert de votre sujet. Donc, c'est à vous de montrer que vous êtes capable de le transmettre et d'en parler à un public plus large. Donc, concentrez-vous sur les compétences et pas juste sur la recherche elle-même. Évitez d'utiliser trop de jargon lié à votre domaine. Essayez de trouver des métaphores et des comparaisons, si c'est des choses très abstraites, pour pouvoir le rendre accessible et compréhensible. Quand vous parlez de votre recherche, mettez vraiment en avant les enjeux de votre projet. Pourquoi est-ce que vous avez décidé de travailler sur cette question? À quoi on peut étendre, élargir finalement ce champ de recherche, même au niveau des applications ou des changements que ça pourrait amener dans la vie quotidienne dans un futur plus ou moins long. Donc, comme je l'ai dit, utilisez les métaphores, les comparaisons. Et puis derrière au-delà de votre sujet, positionnez-vous en manager de projet, expliquez vraiment comment vous avez géré ce projet de thèse, quelles sont les responsabilités, les méthodologies et les résultats utilisés. Comme je l'ai déjà dit, positionnez-vous aussi en solutionneur de problèmes. OK. Eh bien, du coup, voilà. Du coup, on attend avec vous que vous partagiez vos expériences ou vos questions et on se rend toutes disponibles pour y répondre au mieux.
I'll unmute myself and say thank you again, Laurence et Faustine, for sharing some of those tips with us. This is the point where we always like to be able to open it up to questions or even just to conversation as to, you know, things that you'd like to discuss. So I can kind of start that off maybe by sharing some of my experience. So for myself, I think around halfway through my PhD, I realized that I did not have a lot of interest in pursuing the academic track. And I realized, oh no, I don't know anything else. So what am I supposed to do? So I kind of just took it upon myself to start reaching out to other people. I did a lot of kind of cold calling, cold emailing, to asking people if they would come have a 20-minute coffee with me and just talk to me about what they do. So I was able to learn about different industries like finance and consulting and like learning and development positions within different industries in the Montreal area. And kind of being able to grow my network like that was really helpful. So I noticed that in the requests, there were some requests about, like, you know, how can we network right now, which is very challenging, but I think that there are still options and maybe we can discuss some of those. And not just from my experience, but when we ask this question to for PhDs and employers alike, like how they find each other across countries, usually the network is the highest percent or the highest ranking answer that we have. So I would definitely encourage you to, you know, to try to continue to engage your network and grow your network, because this is usually the way that PhDs find their jobs. So I do see one question here in the chat that says, I'm finalizing my PhD and I need to know how to search for a job that requires a PhD in my field. So this is a great question. How do we even start finding that job? When I see the requirement of a PhD, that's a little tricky because I find, at least in Canada, I think around 1 or 2% of jobs will require a PhD, which is actually okay because in Canada we're about 1% of the populations which are PhDs, but it still doesn't seem like a lot. And I find that it will not always be the case that a PhD will be required for a position, even if a position is looking for someone that has a PhD. They can say a PhD is an asset or would be preferred. It can often be the case where, just to not exclude potential candidates, that they would not make the PhD a requirement. Do you find the same things in France or in Belgium for the rest of my team?
Yes, for France at least, indeed, it's not always written on the job description that a PhD is required. Then you can also, I think, see with the kind of like PhD associations or the association of your university where you can find some job offer for PhDs specifically. And sometimes also what we do in Adoc is that when we are looking for a PhD for a particular position, a research position, we are sending the job description to the main labs working on that field. So maybe also the associate professor of your team or the professors of your team can then send to you the job descriptions. So finally, it's what you said, Rebecca, it's network. And I think the associations also can be an idea. So it can be good just to like go to see them to ask, hey, do you have sometimes some job description for PhDs? It can help, I think.
Sure. Oftentimes, well, I don't know if I should say often, but I find that sometimes also the organizations or like you mentioned, they have info letters. So if I find a place to be particularly resourceful, I'll either subscribe to their info letter or I bookmark pages. Like if there are companies I'm interested in working with or organizations I know that hire PhDs, I bookmark their careers pages so that I can check back easily. Laurence, I don't know if you had any like Belgium specific thoughts on that, but if not, it's okay.
No, I think it's quite the same. I would just add that yes, it exists some job position where a PhD degree is required, but don't forget that your PhD is an experience, so you can always apply on a job who require a master with experience, for example, and you just have to target on the just level and not too low or not too high. But in fact, you have to see your PhD as an experience and the skills acquired more than only for the degree. But yeah.
Thank you.
The other advice are the same in Belgium. So the network clearly can help a lot.
I think that your response as far as situating the PhD as an experience kind of leads nicely into another question that I see in the chat. And this question asks, why do people say academic skills are different from non-academic skills that are required in industry? They're essentially a similar set of competencies necessary for surviving in any working environment. And that's a good point. So generally, I find that context is very important for the skills and understanding skills. So, and the reason that Adoc sets out to do these studies and to work with PhDs, but also employers and a lot of other stakeholders in the higher education community, such as nonprofits and things like that, is because there is sometimes this like misalignment in understanding how to value those skills that we develop within academia outside of academia. And they are valuable, but we have to adjust the context. So that's why we talk about transferable competencies, and in a lot of our trainings, we try to highlight how to do that. So as far as the skills themselves go, no, they are not necessarily specific to PhDs, right? You could have a bachelor's, you could have a bachelor's or a master's, or, you know, not even have finished high school, but still develop those competencies. The added value that we find to promote for those competencies are not the individual skills, but the pool of competencies. So the difference between a competency and being able to complete a task competently is your ability to mobilize all of those competencies that you have in unison and the right place and the right time. So it's the pool of skills that you're bringing, I think, that adds that extra value. Now, as far as having, you know, those to be valued outside of the academic context, I think this is really where it's important to remember some of the tips Laurence mentioned about the STAR statements and things like that, which really means for you to kind of have to do the work in being able to contextualize your skills and how that they can add value in different contexts other than the experience of your PhD, because they do, but a lot of times people need help with that translation. I think if someone else would like to add to that, please do.
Sometimes it's also a matter of vocabulary, and when we talk about academic skills and non-academic skills, it can actually be exactly the same. It's just the words that are different, and most of the time there is a gap between academic and non-academic, exactly because the vocabulary is different, and sometimes people don't understand each other, but they are still talking about exactly the same thing. So also when you prepare your CV, take a look on the vocabulary in the job offer, or the vocabulary which could be specific to the sector you're targeting. So sometimes it can also be a point that can be really taken into account when you talk about your competencies.
Thank you so much, Marianne. That's absolutely right. Also, Laurence had mentioned this when in the tips for writing cover letters and resumes, but the language is very important. Personally, I found that the more that I started to network and have informational interviews with people in different industries, the more I learned and got familiar with the language. So that happened to me, you know, as well, where I had done years and years of research in motivation, and when I went to look for a job, I realized that, you know, nobody calls it that; they call it engagement. So, like, I'm an engagement expert on some of my job applications. So I do see another point here in the chat that doing a PhD does not mean someone has a theoretic mind. It just means to help us think out of the box and to search for different aspects, and is an experience that teaches us how to effectively deal with things, and that you don't have a deep knowledge in the beginning and finally have added values. Thank you for that comment. Are there any questions or any is there anyone who, you know, would like to add anything or talk about this? Let's see. I don't see any hands raised. Please don't be afraid to speak.
We just had a question on the chat, actually. So sometimes the requirement of jobs and also tips for finding jobs seem unrealistic. Getting a PhD and doing research plus working at the same time is hard, and we do networking within our disciplines, but then to go out and make networks with other companies, is it doable? This is the question.
Yeah, it's tough, right? A PhD is demanding, especially, you know, when we're working at the same time or starting a family at the same time. It can be overwhelming. So, you know, everyone's situation would be different. I would never tell you to just drop everything and go to, like, try and set unrealistic expectations, you know, of what you're able to do in a day, because then you'll burn yourself out. But for me, I found, you know, I found it was helpful to try and target like a happy medium. So I had a goal to, you know, either reach out to or meet with one new person a month. which I found that if I just worked it into my schedule and put it in my calendar, that I kind of made it happen. So like the network within academia is important, but if ever you would like to look for work outside, I would definitely suggest to try and find a way to, you know, double up, or maybe reach out to your academic network and see who they know that they can connect you with that's beyond that. So like your academic network can also be a tool in helping you reach beyond the academy. Does anyone else have thoughts on this?
Il y a aussi des salons d'emploi, notamment en France. Il y en a un qui est spécialisé dans le recrutement de docteurs, c'est-à-dire que toutes les entreprises ou toutes les structures qui sont présentes, elles sont là pour recruter des docteurs. Et ça s'appelle le PhD Talent Career Fair. Et c'est vraiment le moyen, même si on n'a pas trop le temps d'aller voir toutes les entreprises qui nous intéressent, c'est au moins le moyen d'avoir le listing et de voir toutes les entreprises qui s'intéressent au profil docteur. Et après, visiter leur site, envoyer des CV, essayer de contacter des personnes. Mais essayer d'y aller pour commencer juste à se faire connaître, à discuter un petit peu avec eux, je pense que ça peut être intéressant et c'est quelque chose qui a lieu tous les ans au mois d'octobre, je crois, à Paris.
Merci, Faustine. So I do see some more questions in the chat of one asking for thoughts on overcoming perception of PhDs making us overqualified. I think Laurence had a good point in there of you know, situating the PhD as an experience. And you know, for me, sorry, I'm just, I see another question that's relating to that, so that's why I paused. Focusing on, you know, your ability to apply your skills to successfully complete the tasks in the job description, and just situating the PhD and the way that you talk about it, you know, that can sometimes make a difference as an experience, can help. But this is a challenge, you know, that I think there's not a short answer to, and that's why we do the work that we do, so that we can now continue to promote the PhD as a professional experience in and outside of the academy, importantly, as well as, you know, within the industries that we work in. As for, I see a question of, is doing a postdoc preferred? This, I think, really may be field dependent, because I know in different types of sciences, it is very much still expected or a part of the general career trajectory, or as far as like perhaps people who do PhDs in social sciences and humanities, I would expect less postdoc experience going into the industry. But I know sometimes when I look at posts where you know, we're in hard sciences, perhaps like microbiology, you know, those are considered professional experiences, you know, even with though it's a postdoc. And I think that some of these questions actually are quite related. So first, I see a question that most jobs ask for experience, and very few job positions are for entry-level people. And unfortunately, it can be the case where some recruiters may not consider a PhD as experience. So how do we work with this problem in Adoc? You know, for us, we do consider the PhD experience, and my suggestion, I think, for you would be the same way that I approach that when I recruit for those positions, is to really, the way that you talk about the PhD, the way that you promote your skills in the context of the PhD, is not just to say, oh, I did a PhD in this and this was my specialty, and talking just about the research, but really to contextualize them within those statements of, you know, not just the PhD, but what are the skills that I used during that work experience in this situation to address this problem, and what were the concrete results of that? So I think that when you start to talk more about results, that you start to get more attention from those that are hiring outside of the academy. If anyone would like to jump in, please do. I don't want to be talking just me the whole time.
We have two questions that may be interesting for Laurence to answer. It's one on research consulting and another on networking. So I think Laurence is really dedicated to this kind of subject. So the first question is so about networking. At least on LinkedIn, I have hundreds of connections, but it is very rarely that that they answer my messages or emails. So what other ways of networking could you suggest?
Okay, so I will try to answer different questions at the same time. As Marion said, you can send us your CV on spontaneous application for each country. So you have to go on the website so we can keep your CV on our database and come back to you when we have new opportunities that match your expectation and experience. You are not our client. Our clients are companies or universities, so you don't have to pay anything to be in our database. So that's an important point. And regarding the research consulting, or at least, indeed, in Belgium, we are recruiting strategy management consultants for clients with a PhD degree, freshly PhD degree. So for those who can be interested by this position can apply online, and I will come back to you to discuss about it. I'm not especially specialist on research consulting, but we have at Adoc other clients more specialized on R&D consulting. So I really invite you to check regularly the job position we have, because it can be in these sectors, but definitely you have to be more familiar with the actor in your region that work on research consulting. So you have to use the specific website where you have the list of company or the group on LinkedIn dedicated to this field. So you can learn, extend your network, and know more and more companies and consulting companies in your field. Yeah. Okay. And other companies. For edition and writing, maybe more in Paris than in Brussels.
Oui, effectivement, alors ça dépend des types de postes, mais par exemple, on a eu des postes où il y a besoin effectivement de beaucoup rédiger, des postes notamment liés à la propriété intellectuelle, des ingénieurs brevets, ce genre de choses. Et comme c'était pour la France, c'était pas la peine d'être natif English, mais il fallait absolument maîtriser le français écrit. C'était important. Donc l'anglais reste important. Après, quand on est en thèse, on part du principe que tout le monde parle un peu anglais quand même. Au moins, c'est lire et un peu écrire, parce que les publications, en général, c'est en anglais. Mais si vous avez un niveau d'anglais que vous ne trouvez pas suffisant et que vraiment ça bloque, n'hésitez pas à prendre des cours, parce que c'est vrai que de plus en plus, l'anglais, on demande de pouvoir le parler un minimum maintenant, notamment en recherche. C'est un contexte extrêmement international. Donc, si vous vous sentez pas capable d'échanger au téléphone ou via des visios comme ça en anglais, il faut travailler là-dessus. Mais en tout cas, effectivement, nous, on a eu des postes à Paris où ce n'était pas nécessaire de savoir parler l'anglais.
Merci, Faustin. I did see one question about the data presented for Canada, and that is for the whole country, not just the Montreal area. So the PH Detective study that was held in Canada was nationwide. And if ever you want to see more details on that, you can download the entire study or just the highlights on our website. Let's see. Do we have any last questions or any that we missed, perhaps?
I see comments regarding LinkedIn and activities. Gay say that he has very rarely answer to his message or emails. I don't know exactly what kind of messages or emails and in which group or with which goal. In fact, you exchange all that message, but try to be more specific, maybe begin to share information in specific group relative to your field, connected to your sector, to see if you have more feedback. And about the message, if you ask something quite specific to someone, yeah, I observe a lot of good answer when you show interest for other people. So explain that you are interested by the job or by the career path or by the experience and want to exchange about it. And then you can ask some help or some advices. Maybe it's on the techniques, we could talk about it, but I think you have to be more specific and not to share to large audience without specificity. Maybe they react, there is less reaction.
Maybe taking a look at our messaging strategy could be helpful. And that has been the case for me, where I had to kind of figure out the best way to ask for things. I do see a question for you, Laurence, here.
Alors, pour la Belgique, donc la Belgique, on développe le bureau depuis 1 an. Donc, on a beaucoup développé sur l'aspect des formations avec toutes les universités. Donc, on travaille avec toutes les universités. Concernant les entreprises, comme je l'ai dit, on a un client en stratégie et management. On a effectivement déjà travaillé sur des entreprises plutôt PME en life science, mais voilà, on n'a pas encore autant de références qu'on en a en France ou au Canada. Voilà, c'est des choses qui peuvent arriver à tout moment. Donc, on espère vraiment pouvoir vous proposer de nouvelles offres et de nouvelles opportunités très prochainement dans tous les secteurs. Donc, il faut rester attentif. Maintenant, s'il y a une question plus précise là-dessus, Jana, tu peux m'écrire. Voilà.
I did, I think when I was answering the question about data in Canada, I may have missed part of that. So to answer about Canada specifically, we do work with companies outside of Montreal. At the moment, I don't have any clients in the Vancouver area, although you can always check back later. Typically, because we've only been in Montreal for a few years, we work mainly with companies in the area, but also the Toronto area. So I would say more Quebec and Ontario, but yeah. And as far as specific tips for finding jobs in Canada, I think it would be similar to, to the tips that we have either for Canada or in Europe. But if as far as kind of trying to find maybe those organizations that Faustin had mentioned earlier, or if you find that there are particular companies in your area that tend to hire PhDs, perhaps to like follow them and if they have any publicly attendable events, to try and work your way into that network, or reach out to someone in the company and say, hey, I see you do like this. I have a specific question about that. Would you be able to, to talk with me for just 15 minutes? But just getting into be able to talk with people in companies that you notice hire PhDs. And sometimes I find that just by doing a little bit of digging and research, by skimming through their teams and things like that. I see a question. I know we're just running to the end of our time, so Marianne already responded to that question of what do we do during this crazy time when employment is rocky. So, if your lab has closed or, whatever it is that you're doing, if the pandemic has affected your personal and professional situation, I would just say to know that, it's the same for everyone. You're not alone there. So we understand that, like, it's not just us who are affected by that. So I think anyone that you talk to, should be understanding of that. And that's, I wouldn't look at that type of unemployment as a problem, as typically we would have in the past. Sure. So perhaps just a last question before we thank everyone for joining us today is about salary. And I'm not sure what the salary structure is like in Europe, but I mean, really, as far as salary goes and looking at the data, I can say that it very much depends on the industry, on the sectors, on the position. Even when you start to look at outside of academia, we find very different numbers, whether you're working in government or healthcare or finance. So when looking at salary information, if you're trying to do some benchmarking for yourself, I would really try to keep it industry specific. I think that's probably the best advice that I could give.
Yeah, and concerning salary, it will really depend on the sector, on your profile, like on your professional or academic path. But you can actually use salary simulators that are like the one you can find on Glassdoor, and they can give you a very good idea of, well, on a certain job, what could you expect depending on your profile and on a specific sector. So it will completely depend on lots of points.
Thank you, Marianne. Yes, for Canada, at least l'Emploi, the Job Bank of Canada, I was searching the name in English. The Job Bank of Canada, which is the government website for employment in Canada, you can search and explore jobs under their trends analysis section. So you can explore different types of jobs, and in addition to descriptions about the role and skills that you might be expected, they also disclose some salary information. So that could be a good benchmark for anyone looking in Canada. Mm-hmm. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining. I see the last question in the chat about if we offer comments on CVs and motivation letters. If ever you apply for a position through us and we have a match for a client that we're working with for that position, of course, I always give advice on the CV or resume before we share your information with our clients. If we reach out to you for that. So, it's not the case that every CV that comes through, we give comments and provide feedback for everyone. But if we work with you on a position that's a fit with your skills and experience, then yes, we do. So I would just like to take a moment to thank everyone for your time today, for joining us in a discussion about, our skills, what they are, how to promote them, and how to understand what our options are in pursuing our careers. And I'd like to also thank the team at Adoc for your time here as well, and for your advice. And,
thank you, Rebecca.
Sure. So the Transatlantic webinar is a series we would like to continue with new topics. So we would ask you to, please keep an eye out, subscribe to our info letter, connect with us on LinkedIn, check out our webpage, our Facebook, all those things, because we are continuously, trying to make the next one even, more relevant and better as time continues. So I hope that you all enjoy the rest of your day, whether it's morning or evening. and we look forward to keeping in touch.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Merci.
Bye, everyone.
Merci.